So let's talk the RBC Heritage here. Technically, this is an invitational tournament, so it's only going to be 132 runners instead of your typical kind of 156 runners that we see at tournaments. That said, it does stick with the 65 and ties, however, so you're going to get half the field make the cut in this. So keep this in mind, specifically if you're playing DFS, but like keep that in mind if you're betting as well, that half the field is going to make the cut in this tournament. It's a shorter course. It is smaller greens than typical. It is not going to be like we saw at the Masters last week of the fairways. Listen, you can hit the fairways at the Masters, right? Like it's not going to be like that with this tournament. You don't have to be long, where we emphasized last week that being long was something that we were certainly looking at with the golfers we were targeting. You don't have to be long this week at this tournament. You can look at the past history to show just how much you don't need to be long in order to have success here at this one. And so, looking here, Stephen, it's a completely different type of golfer that I was kind of looking at this week than what I was looking at last week, to the point where driving distance wasn't even a factor for me in the least bit. Like, I don't care at all about driving distance, whereas driving distance was, a fifth of my model last week. It is not even in there this week. What were you looking at as far as the golfers you're targeting?
Yeah, basically replaced the driving distance with some fairways gained, although I looked as well at a second model where I didn't even put a large emphasis. I say large, like 10 to 15% on the first model, and then less than 10% on the second model for fairways gained, because our golf writer, John Hasselbauer, made a good point as well that, a lot of those fairways gained stats are mostly with driver in hand, where a lot of these guys this week are going to be taking less than driver off the tee, which is going to give them an even bigger chance of hitting fairways this week as well. So I'm not even sure how much that stat matters as much this week. So for me, it's all about approach. These are some of the smallest greens on tour all year. So we want elite ball strikers. And then when they miss these smallest greens on tour all year, they can get up and down from around the green. So strokes gained around the green, scrambling, sand saves, that type of stuff is what I'm looking for. And sure enough, there were some short hitters that started to drift up the rankings this week.
Yeah, definitely for me, when I didn't really care all that much about any of that. And listen, yes, we have seen some bombs win here in the past, Stephen. And so I'm sure it's going to make some people really want to, put some of these super long shots. And listen, I have a couple in the account. That being said, we did get 11 of the top 20 golfers in the world in this one this week. Yeah. And so typically not as strong of a field as we got this year. And so we got 11 of the top 20 here with some guys that maybe outside of that top 20 that are rounding into form just a little bit. So I do at least want to say this isn't one of those slam dunk, like, okay, let's bet all, 8,500, 125, 150 to 1 type guys. I think that there are, I'm not going to probably bet any of the short shots here. That being said, I don't think it's the worst thing in the entire world. I don't think we can just grip on to what we've seen kind of in the past here.
No, I'm with you. I have my betting card this week, which I posted in our staff bets channel on Discord, is a pretty decent mix of guys that are in that 20 to 30 to 1 range. And then you have a handful of guys in that 50 to 70 range. And then a couple of bombs that are like, I even have a guy that's 400 to 1 this week. He's dipped to 300 to 1, Adam Svensson, but I couldn't ignore throwing at least some lunch money on Luke Donald at 300 to 1 and Adam Svensson at 400 to 1, because the last time guys with odds that long wound up in the top 15 of the model, a guy named Hudson Swafford won a golf tournament earlier this year, and I didn't have a ticket on him. So I'm not making that mistake again in the off chance that one of these guys wind up hitting.
Don't blame you in the least bit. I mean, this is one of those deals where, I do the same thing that you're talking about, man. Like, I'm just sitting here where I go, okay, if a guy is just absolutely destroying my model, then that's something I've got to pay attention to for sure. Now, if we look at the top of the board, it's Justin Thomas, it's Colin Morikawa, it's Cam Smith, it's Patrick Cantlay, it's Dustin Johnson. All these guys are sub 20 to 1 to win the tournament. You would imagine that would be the case whenever you're talking about guys as good as that in a tournament kind of like this. You do get to the 20-1 range once you get to a Daniel Berger, Russell Henley, Corey Connors, Webb Simpson gets into that 30-ish range. Tyrrell Hatton, Sung J M, Billy Horschel, Joaquin Neiman. Again, so you can see where I'm going with there are some names in this tournament. Jordan Spieth is playing. Kevin Kisner is playing. So there are some definite names in this tournament to where it's not one of those deals where, you have to just play a bomb here because there's, nobody playing in it. So, that did affect me just a little bit anyway. Let's start with you. Where did your card kind of start to take shape here? And what are your outrights you have in the account?
My model agreed with what John Hasselbauer's did as well. His betting card is also on the site right now for those interested. Daniel Berger. I think I locked him in at 28-1. I think he popped 30-1 at a couple of spots this week. I don't know if that number's still there, but clearly the top player across the stats I put in this week. Really only one stat where he isn't in the top 30 out of the 10 stats I used. So just an elite ball striker in this field over the past 50 rounds. In fact, he's ranked number 1 in strokes gained on approach over that span, number 2 in strokes gained on approach over his last 36 holes, and just pretty strong over his last 50 rounds at the yardages that we care about on approach at this course. The 3 different kind of breakdowns of 125 to 150, 150 to 175, and 175 to 200. Really no holes in his iron game from those parameters. So, and on top of that, he's really good around the greens as well. So that's where the card started. I will admit I don't like the number on Shane Lowry. It's short. It's shorter than I typically like to play him, but just again, another situation where I'm going to be mad at myself if I don't have him on my card this week when he literally ranks in the top 3 for me across the board.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the shortest guy that is going to make the card for me, I really do like Berger a lot. There's no doubt about that. I am just weirdly, my model loves him. I personally am just weirdly attracted to Corey Connors this week. I mean, a guy that, again, doesn't have to be long, coming in good form, has everything kind of that I'm looking for in this one. Where I really wanted to be was Matt Fitzpatrick. He's a guy that just kind of lit up my model here, but it's just the odds are so short on Fitzpatrick. It's just hard for me on a Matt Fitzpatrick to pull the trigger at like 18, 19, 20-1. And Steven, I know I should trust the numbers and I should trust what I'm looking at all the time. But sometimes if that doesn't add up with what I feel like I should be getting on a golfer, especially from an outright and a win equity standpoint, I love Fitzpatrick. I'm going to end up playing him in placement markets. I just can't pull the trigger on a guy like him at, in that 18, 19 range. Yeah.
I'm curious where we're differing here on Fitzpatrick, because I know that's a guy that's gotten a lot of talk on golf Twitter for this tournament this week. But I'm with you. I didn't bet him and he didn't wind up in the top 20 of my model this week. I'm curious where he wound up for you and what stats in particular he's popping for you.
Well, so I kind of did some messing around with the model, right? Because here's the problem. Here's the problem with Fitzpatrick. If you put in proximity numbers, it's going to crash him in all versions of your model. Like his proximity numbers are terrible, right? And so if you remove proximity and then you kind of start coming at it from a different angle, then you can start to see where he does excel and where he is actually starting to pop a little bit here and there. Also, I did go with a little bit of course history here. It is one of the tournaments where a lot of these guys continue to kind of come back, and he has had some really good success here. And so there's a little bit of stuff going on with my model and a little bit of subjectivity for me as well in this one. And so that's kind of how I ended up on Fitzpatrick in that whole deal. I mean, we got a T4, a T14, a T39, and a T14 in his last 4 starts here. So 3 T14 or betters in his last 4 starts. And, when you you have something like that, for me, also a little tough to ignore.
Yeah, there's one other guy I want to mention. I won't give my whole betting card. You guys can go to the Discord to get that. But there's one interesting storyline here with Joaquin Niemann. To me, he is a guy, if I filtered for short courses and took away a little bit of fairways gained in the weighting of the model, he started to rise. And I think there's two reasons for that. I think it's because he is good with less than driver off of the tee, which he can get away with at this course. And I also think it's because this is a course and a situation that he really likes. John Hasselbauer actually got a birthday message as a gift from Joaquin Niemann one year. And in that message, he responded with his favorite course on the PGA Tour as being Hilton Head, as being this course, Harbortown Golf Links. So I think that's narrative, but in terms of the numbers, there's reason to like him, even though the overall off the tee fairway numbers don't like him as much as these other guys. But it's not the same situation as we talked about where he's taken driver off the tee on a lot of these holes. He's going to be a lot more accurate on this course than he would be others off the tee.
Yeah, I agree. I like him a lot as well. We'll probably have some sort of something on him. Like we'll probably have some sort of how about sort of ticket
20,
on him one way or another.
How about at least top 20 on Niemann with odds that are basically the same to top 20 this week as they were at the Masters last week? Because that don't make any sense to me.
Yeah, you know, a guy that I think there's no way I'm going to be able to get rid of, and I typically don't like to bet Shane Lowery, but Shane Lowery is 1 or 2 in every version of the model that I ran. He is in this field over the last 36 rounds. He is 6th in the field in strokes gained total. He's 15th in tee to green. He's 15th in ball striking. He's 3rd in approach. He's, even if you go to the stuff that I don't really care about in putting, he's 43rd in putting. His short game is 34th. I mean, like everything about Lowry outside of off the tee is really, really great. And we just mentioned, we're not really worried all that much about off the tee this week. We just kind of want a guy who can get it down there, keep it out of the long stuff. If he's in the first cut, I don't really matter, all of that. So, Shane Lowry is going to make the card. I think Tom Hoagie is going to make the card as well. Another guy that just really ranks well throughout the course of my model. He's kind of a longer shot guy that I think I'm going to have tickets on in this thing. And then finally, Stephen, I am targeting these guys whose strength is the driver. I'm targeting head-to-heads against them. So I'm going in and looking for the Cameron Youngs of the world, the different things like all these guys whose big time strength is the driver, where a course that you don't need driver as strength. And I'm looking to really play against those guys in head to head. So if you go, guys, if you don't have any of these sites that you can model on or something, you can just go to PGAtour.com. You can look at who's leading in driving distance and where they're getting, the biggest amount of help from the driver. You can filter through those guys and you can kind of see who maybe some targets kind of start to show up. And really and truly, that is one of the main guys that I'm trying to find head to heads against as well. Plus, I think, Stephen, and this is just subjective, but started out real hot, a guy that moved up from the Korn Ferry Tour, starting to struggle a little bit now. Maybe it's, moving to the PGA's catching up with him just a tad. So also that kind of factors into wanting to go after him as well.
Yeah. And if you look at his results, he had a top 20 at the Farmers. He had a T2 at the Genesis, T16 at the Honda. Those are courses where distance really helps you. Right. And yeah. To your point, I'm literally on his profile page on the PGA Tour's website, and you click on performance. It tells you that he's 5th on tour this year off the tee in strokes gained, but 117th on approach. Exactly what you're saying, the kind of guy you want to target against in head-to-heads this week, where there is no advantage for distance off the tee.
Yes. And guys, again, for the full card, head over to the Discord. We'll post all of those in there as well. But again, those are some of the guys that we're on, some of the guys that we're targeting, and be sure and get everyone's full thoughts over there. On the lines, you can see John's full betting card. And then if you head to the Discord, you can get our betting card as well.